The sun in Lagos does not rise gently, it crashes into the city like a restless landlord banging on a tenant's door. By 7 a.m., the Baligan market was already awake, alive with the usual chaos, hawkers weaving through traffic with trays of groundnuts balanced on their heads, bus conductors yelling destinations with hoarse voices, and traders dragging open corrugated shutters as if pulling secrets from the night. Sandra stood in front of her shop, broom in hand, sweeping yesterday's dust from the tiled floor. Her shop was not much, just a square space squeezed between Mama Tolu, who sold Ankara fabrics with a voice that could wake the dead, and a shoe seller known as Alhaji, who seemed to know every customer's name and life history. Compared to them, Sandra's stall looked quiet, almost shy. A modest glass shelf held wigs in neat rows, each one perched on a cheap, dull mannequin head. The wigs looked better than her business felt. She was 28, slim with fine cheekbones, but Lagos had already carved worry lines across her forehead. Since her father's sudden death 3 years ago, she had been the breadwinner. University had ended halfway, fees unpaid, dreams postponed. Mama Grace, her mother, still sold Gary in front of their compound, her joints aching more with each rainy season. Sandra always promised her, "Mama, give me time. I will change this story. One day you will rest." But for now, Mama Grace was still bending over basins of Gary, while Sandra sat in the market, watching customers pass as if her shop was invisible. By noon, sweat had glued her blouse to her back. She had already rearranged the wigs 3 times, fluffing them with exaggerated care, as if more volume might draw a customer. Every so often, she found herself with a piece of curtain, eyes trailing the women drifting toward bigger, brighter wig shops, the ones with ring lights, Instagram signs, and sales girls in matching outfits. "Auntie, come see good hair. Original fiber, no shedding," she called out, trying to mimic her neighbor's confidence. But most women didn't even glance her way. When a customer finally stopped, Sandra's heart leapt. She smiled wide, showing the woman her best lace frontal. "How much?" the woman asked flatly. 28,000, madam. Very soft, no tangling." The woman's lips twisted into a snort. "I'll pay 10,000. Sandra forced a laugh. "Madam, I can't even buy it at that price." The woman waved her hand dismissively and walked away without another word. Sandra sank back into her chair, chest tight. It was always like this: either they priced her down to nonsense, or they ignored her entirely. Some days she went home without selling a single wig. But still, she stayed. Because Sandra believed Lagos owed her a breakthrough. She believed one day the same city that had stolen her father and strangled her dreams would open its palm and hand her something big. Until then, she endured. By the time the sun began its slow crawl toward the horizon, Sandra was ready to give up on the day. Her throat was dry from calling out to passers-by, her face sticky with sweat, her heart heavy from disappointment. She had sold nothing. Not even a cheap closure wig. She was just about to start locking up when a shadow fell across her doorway. Sandra looked up. A woman stood there, tall and graceful, dressed in a silk blouse and fitted skirt that shimmered faintly in the fading light. Her hair flowed smooth and glossy, catching the evening sun like water. She did not look like an ordinary market customer. She looked like someone who had walked in with purpose. "I hear you're new here," the woman said, her voice calm, measured. Sandra blinked, suddenly self-conscious of her small, dusty stall. "Yes, auntie. Just managing." The woman's lips curved into the faintest smile. "I used to sell wigs too. But I'm retiring. I thought of giving this to you." Before Sandra could respond, the woman lifted a sack she had been holding. From it, she pulled out 3 mannequins. Sandra's breath caught. Sandra blinked, suddenly self-conscious of her small, dusty stall. "Yes, auntie. Just managing." They were unlike the dull plastic heads she had been saving to replace. These ones were tall, with smooth, glossy faces and sharp cheekbones. Their features were carved with unsettling precision, almost too perfect for lifeless dummies. Most disturbing were their eyes, round, glassy, glistening like marbles catching fire. They looked as if they could blink at any moment. Sandra gasped. "Oh, madam, I'm not buying mannequins for now. Market is dull." The woman shook her head slowly. "No. I'm not selling. I'm giving them out if you want. Just take care of them. They'll help you." Sandra's heart raced. She had been saving for months to buy better mannequins. Could this be luck at last? She nodded eagerly. "Thank you so much." "Yes, I want them." The woman placed the mannequins gently inside the shop. Sandra turned briefly to shift her wigs and make space, her lips parting to ask the woman's name. But when she turned back, the woman was gone. Not walking away. Not blending into the crowd. Simply gone, as if she had dissolved into the noisy Lagos evening. Sandra froze, eyes darting across the market. The fabric woman was still shouting about her ankara, the shoe seller was still haggling with a customer, the street boys were still running errands, but the mysterious woman was nowhere to be seen. Her gaze drifted back to the mannequins. Their glossy faces caught the last rays of sunlight. Their blank eyes glowed faintly, reflecting her own stunned expression. Sandra's lips curved into a small smile. For the first time that day, she felt a spark of hope. "Maybe," she whispered to herself, "my luck has finally come." Sandra arrived early the next morning, excitement bubbling under her tired eyes. She had hardly slept, replaying the strange encounter with the mysterious woman. Who gives away expensive mannequins for free? And how did she vanish so suddenly? Still, Sandra brushed the thought aside. Maybe, she told herself, it was just one of those Lagos miracles people talked about. She unwrapped the mannequins and placed them in front of her shop. Their glossy skin gleamed in the morning light, their faces eerily calm, as if they had been waiting for this moment. Sandra dressed one in a curly black wig she hadn't been able to sell for months. She adjusted the hairline, brushed it down, and stepped back to admire it. "Fine," she whispered. "Maybe too fine." She didn't expect much. The wig had been rejected over and over again, too rough, too old-fashioned, customers said. Sandra only wanted to test how the mannequins looked with wigs on. But barely an hour later, a woman stopped in her tracks. Her eyes locked on the mannequin. She didn't expect much. The wig had been rejected over and over again, too rough, too old-fashioned, customers said. Sandra only wanted to test how the mannequins looked with wigs on. But barely an hour later, a woman stopped in her tracks. Her eyes locked on the mannequin. "This one, how much?" she asked, pointing straight at the wig Sandra had almost given up on. Sandra blinked, surprised. "Yeah, 25,000, madam." The woman nodded immediately. "Pack it for me." Sandra's mouth fell open. No bargaining. No drama. Just like that. She almost wanted to pinch herself. She quickly wrapped the wig before the woman changed her mind. "Do you want to check others, madam? I have new styles." The woman shook her head, eyes still glued to the mannequin. "No. That one is enough." She paid full price in cash and walked away. Sandra stood frozen, clutching the money. She stared at the mannequin. Its glossy eyes seemed brighter now, almost mocking. Its lips curved ever so slightly, as if it was sharing a secret she couldn't hear. She laughed nervously, shaking her head. No coincidence. Nothing special. But before the day ended, it happened again. And again. Every week she placed on the mannequins sold first. Old stock that had gathered dust disappeared. Customers didn't argue, didn't question. They pointed, paid, and left. Even Alhaji, the shoe seller next door, raised his brows as Sandra packed wig after wig. On, Sandra baby, he teased. No so market they move today. Abi you don't join Instagram influencers. Sandra laughed, hiding the thrill in her chest. No god oh. By evening, she counted her sales twice, then a third time, just to be sure. It was more money than she had made in weeks. She closed her shop with trembling fingers, her heart pounding with something between joy and fear. As she turned off the light, she glanced once more at the mannequins. Their glossy faces gleamed in the shadows, unblinking, their smiles faint but undeniable. For the first time in her life, Sandra walked home with her head high. Her luck, it seemed, had finally changed. The days that followed felt like a dream. Sandra barely had time to sit anymore. From the moment she opened her shop, customers streamed in. Women who once brushed past her store now stopped, their eyes magnetized by the wig sitting on her new mannequins. They didn't ask for discounts. They didn't complain about price. They didn't even touch other wigs. It was always the mannequin. Whatever style Sandra placed on it, curly, bone straight, even the cheap synthetic blends she once thought unsellable, sold out almost instantly. By the end of her first week, Sandra had restocked twice. By the second week, she had more customers than her tiny shop could hold. By the end of the month, her sales doubled, then tripled. Her neighbors watched with a mix of awe and suspicion. Nor so this girl's market just blow like that. Mama Tolu, the Ankara seller, muttered one morning, fanning herself with the edge of her wrapper. No Instagram oh, Ahaji replied, shaking his head. Young girls sabi do social media marketing now. Me SEF go try am. But Sandra knew the truth. It wasn't Instagram. It wasn't luck. It was the mannequins. And though she tried to ignore it, she couldn't help noticing small, unsettling details. Sometimes, as she closed the shop at night, she swore their eyes followed her. Once, she could have sworn the lips of the tallest mannequin curved into a sly smile when a customer handed her a word of note. Another time, when she brushed the dust off their glossy skin, she felt warmth beneath her palm, like touching human flesh. Sandra shook the thoughts away. Don't be silly. They're just plastic. Just mannequins. Besides, how could she complain? In less than 3 months, she had moved her mother from their leaking 2-room apartment on the mainland to a furnished flat in Suralia. She bought herself a Toyota Camry, the first car she had ever owned. Her shop expanded. She hired BC, a sharp-tongued 19-year-old girl from her street, to help with sales. And yet, at night, when the market emptied and Lagos noise died down, Sandra sometimes dreamed of the mannequins. She dreamed they walked. That they stood at her bedside, glassy eyes glistening in the dark. That they whispered in voices she could never fully hear, their lips barely moving. She always woke up sweating, her scalp tingling, her heart thumping as if it wanted to escape her chest. But in the morning, as the cash piled higher, the fear slipped away. Every Lagos hustler prayed for a breakthrough. Hers had finally arrived. Or so she told herself. At first, Sandra told herself it was just stress. Running a shop that never stayed empty, managing customers, ordering stock, handling BC's chatter, it was only natural that she felt tired. But then, the hair started falling. It began with small tufts in the shower, strands clinging stubbornly to her fingers. Sandra laughed it off, buying expensive oils and massaging her scalp at night. Too much heat, that's all, she told her reflection. But within weeks, her thick hair thinned into patches. Wigs she once wore for style became daily camouflage. Scarves, hats, turbans, anything to cover the bald spots spreading like wildfire. Then came the fatigue. No matter how much she slept, she woke drained. Her skin dulled, her eyes sank deep into dark hollows. BC teased her one morning. Auntie, You dey enjoy money but your body no dey enjoy amo. Sandra forced a laugh, but the word stung. By the third month, people had started whispering. Mama Tolu asked her if she was sick. A nosy customer leaned close and muttered, "Madam, you sure say you never joined one of those Lagos secret societies?" Sandra snapped at her, but inside, fear was growing. Her mother was the first to notice the truth. One Sunday evening, as Sandra untied her scarf at home, clumps of hair dropped onto the floor. Mama Grace gasped, dropping the spoon she was using to stir stew. "Yezu! Sandra, your head. What is this?" Sandra tried to laugh, tried to brush it aside. But her mother's sharp eyes caught the tremor in her hands. "This is not ordinary. Tell me, what have you done?" "Mama, nothing. It's just, maybe stress, maybe," her voice cracked. She looked away. That night she dreamed again. The mannequin stood in her shop, but this time their glassy eyes glowed faintly in the dark, like coals. Their faces seemed fuller, more alive. One of them raised a hand slowly, delicately, as if plucking something invisible from the air. When Sandra woke, she found more hair scattered across her pillow. The next morning, she tried to get rid of them. She carried the tallest mannequin to the back of the market, near the refuse dump. Her heart pounded as she pushed it against a pile of broken wood and rotting food, covering it with a torn nylon bag. She walked away quickly, refusing to look back. But when she opened her shop the next day, it was standing there in the corner. Clean. Untouched. Glossy eyes staring at her as if it had never moved. Sandra dropped her keys. Her scream echoed down the market street. Mama Grace had seen enough. Her daughter was shrinking before her eyes. Sandra's once bright face looked hollow now, her cheeks sunken, her skin pale beneath layers of makeup. The vibrant laugh she used to fill the compound with had faded into whispers. Even wigs could not fully cover the bald patches that spread across her scalp. One morning, after watching Sandra cough weakly while trying to tie a scarf, Mama Grace made her decision. "Get dressed," she said firmly. Sandra looked up, confused. "For where?" "We are going to church." "Mama, I beg, I don't have time. Customers are waiting." Mama Grace's hand slapped the table with such force that Sandra jumped. "Customers? When you are dying before my eyes? God forbid." Sandra wanted to argue, but she saw the fire in her mother's eyes and swallowed her protest. That afternoon, they sat in the cool, dim office of Pastor Joseph, a stout man with kind eyes and a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. He listened silently as Mama Grace poured out her worries, her words stumbling over each other: Sandra's sudden wealth, the mannequins, the dreams, the hair loss. Finally, Pastor Joseph turned his gaze to Sandra. "My daughter," he said gently. "Tell me the truth. How did these mannequins enter your shop?" Sandra hesitated, but something in his eyes made it impossible to lie. Haltingly, she described the strange woman, the gift, the sudden success. Her voice shook as she confessed how customers flocked only to the mannequins, how her attempts to throw one away failed. When she finished, silence filled the room. Pastor Joseph leaned back slowly, exhaling. What is it, Pastor?" Mama Grace's voice trembled. He folded his hands. "It is not blessing. It is exchange. Those mannequins were not given freely. They are vessels. Every sale you make, every naira you count, your life is what pays the price." Sandra's chest tightened. "You mean, they are taking my life?" He nodded solemnly. "Wealth without sweat always demands blood, one way or another. These ones are ancient. I have heard of such things before: objects pass from hand to hand, giving riches but draining their owners. That woman did not vanish. She simply gave you her burden." Sandra's stomach turned. She remembered the woman's faint smile, the way she disappeared without a trace. So, what do I do? Her voice cracked. How do I stop it? Pastor Joseph's eyes softened with pity. There is only one way. You must pass it on. Give the mannequins to another, the way they were gifted to you. Only then will you be free. Sandra recoiled. Pass it on. To who? You want me to destroy another person's life? My daughter, he said gravely, better another than you. These things will not let go unless they have a keeper. Decide quickly. Or you may not last much longer. Tears blurred Sandra's eyes. She shook her head violently. No. I can't. I won't ruin someone else. I'll find another way. But deep in her chest, a cold weight settled. Because a small, treacherous voice whispered, if you don't, the mannequins will keep feeding, until there is nothing left of you. Sandra stopped fighting. After the pastor's revelation, she tried. She fasted until her stomach cramped, prayed until her voice cracked, poured anointing oil on the mannequins until their glossy faces gleamed like wet marble. But nothing changed. Her hair continued to fall. Her skin dulled further. Her body felt like it was made of glass, fragile and ready to shatter. And in that weakness, BC began to grow. At first, it was little things. The girl started opening the shop before Sandra arrived, arranging wigs, greeting customers with her loud, youthful energy. Sandra, too tired to care, let her. Then BC began pocketing small amounts from sales, 500 here, 1,000 there. Sandra noticed but lacked the strength to confront her. What was money to a woman whose own life seemed to be leaking away? Soon BC was bold enough to slip wigs into her handbag. When Sandra asked where one particular curly wig had gone, BC swore a customer had bought it. Sandra only sighed, too weary to argue. But BC was not satisfied. She watched Sandra closely, the way her boss dragged her feet, the tremor in her hands, the way her once bright eyes looked sunken and lost. Rumors spread in the market that Sandra was sick, maybe dying. BC saw her opportunity. She began to dream of her own shop. No more working under a weak, fading woman. No more splitting profits. She imagined her name on the lips of customers, her Instagram page buzzing, her pockets full. And always, her eyes lingered on the mannequins. There was something about them she could not explain. Whenever she dressed one with a wig, customers bought it immediately, no questions asked. She didn't know the full story, but she knew enough to sense power. If Sandra was too weak to use it, then why shouldn't she? One evening, as Sandra sat slumped in her chair, eyes half closed, BC whispered softly under her breath. One day soon, everything in this shop will be mine. Sandra didn't hear her. Or maybe she did, and chose not to care. Because deep inside, Sandra already knew, the mannequins were searching for their next keeper. And BC was ready. Sandra woke one morning with a pounding head. Even lifting herself from bed felt like dragging a sack of stones. Her scarf slipped slightly, and in the mirror across the room, she caught a glimpse of her scalp, bare, shiny, like the skin of a boiled egg. She turned away quickly, biting her lip, refusing to cry. She had already poured too many tears into her pillow. That morning, she didn't go to the shop. She simply couldn't. She told herself BC could handle it, that customers would be fine without her. And BC did handle it, too well. For days, Sandra stayed home, claiming weakness. Each evening, she called BC to ask about sales. The answers were always vague, customers plenty, more, or market slow today. Sometimes BC didn't even pick up, only sending short texts, busy with customer. Sandra suspected, but suspicion requires energy, and energy was something she no longer had. Meanwhile, BC was moving quickly. She had already found a new shop space on the mainland, small but clean, freshly painted, with a shiny glass door. She lied to the landlord, saying she had been in business for years, showing him Sandra's Instagram as proof of her work. Every evening, she carried a little more from the shop. A carton of wigs here, a drawer of brushes there. At first she was careful, but when she saw how little Sandra checked, her boldness grew. One night, BC stayed behind after locking the shop. She stood in front of the mannequins. Their glossy eyes seemed to watch her in the dim light, their painted lips curved faintly in that eternal half-smile. She felt no fear. Instead, she felt a rush of ownership. "You are mine now," she whispered. The tallest mannequin seemed to glint, as though acknowledging her. The very next day, Sandra forced herself to the market. She staggered into Baligan, her bones aching, only to find the unimaginable. Her shop was bare. The shelves, once full, now empty. The counter gone. Even the stools and display lights had vanished. Only the broken padlock dangled from the door like a cruel joke. But it was the mannequins that made her knees buckle. Gone. Sandra staggered back, clutching the wall for support. Voices buzzed around her. "Oh, Sandra, who did this to you?" "Thieves again." A god, they cleared everything. She heard none of it. Her eyes blurred. And then, slowly, laughter bubbled from her chest. At first soft, then louder, then uncontrollable. She laughed until tears streamed down her cheeks. The market women stepped back, frightened. Sandra knew what they didn't. She hadn't lost. She had been freed. The mannequins had chosen their next home. She had not given them away, but the curse had taken its own path. That evening, Sandra returned home lighter than she had felt in months. When Mama Grace saw her, she panicked. "They said thieves cleared your shop." "Sandra, my daughter, what will you do now?" Sandra collapsed into her mother's arms, smiling through tears. "Mama, let them take it. I am free." Across town, in her new shop, BC whistled happily as she arranged wigs on polished shelves. She moved with the confidence of someone who believed she had outsmarted the world. In the corner stood the mannequin, its glossy eyes catching the fluorescent light, its lips curved in that faint smile. BC dusted its cheek gently, placed a wig on its head, and stepped back, admiring her work. "Perfect," she whispered. She had no idea the mannequin was already whispering back, silently sealing her fate. For weeks, Sandra barely left her bed. Her body was a battlefield, her hair falling in clumps, her cheeks hollow, her once glowing skin pale and waxy. Every morning, her scarf grew looser, every night her pillow carried more strands of her lost hair. At first, BC felt pity. She would arrive at the shop, arrange the wigs neatly, and pray quietly for her madam to regain strength. But as days turned into weeks, pity cuddled into resentment. Why should she break her back for a boss who no longer cared? Customers still came, still fought for the wigs on the mannequin. Money still poured in. But Sandra was too weak to supervise, too distracted by her own fading body. The first time BC slipped a small bundle of cash into her handbag, her heart raced. She thought Sandra might call to check. But when her boss only sent a tired "how market" text that evening, BC smiled. The next day, she took a wig. Just one wig. She won't notice. But Sandra noticed. Her dull eyes scanned the shelves one afternoon when she gathered strength to visit the shop. "BC, where's that curly one that was here?" "Oh, madam, customer buy 'em yesterday. She no even price." Sandra sighed, rubbed her forehead, and nodded. She didn't ask again. That silence emboldened BC. Soon, BC was removing wigs in pairs, then in cartons. She carried home boxes at night, telling neighbors they were orders for delivery. She began stashing money under her mattress, dreaming of her own signboard with her name written boldly in gold letters. In quiet moments, she stood in front of the mannequins. Their glossy eyes unnerved her, but the thrill of customers rushing to them like bees to honey drowned her fear. She touched the tallest one evening and whispered, "You belong to me now." Not her. The mannequin's glossy eyes glimmered faintly in the dusk, as though agreeing. One Friday morning, Sandra forced herself out of bed. Her mother begged her to rest, but Sandra insisted. "Mama, I must go. I need to see my shop with my own eyes." She wrapped her scarf tightly and took a taxi to Balagan. The Lagos sun felt hotter that day, the market noisier, the air heavier. By the time she reached her row, her chest was pounding. And then she saw it. Her shop, empty. The shelves bare, the counter gone, wigs vanished. Even the stools and display mirrors were missing. The padlock hung broken, like a useless ornament. Sandra staggered forward, gripping the glass doorframe. Her vision blurred. Voices swirled around her. "Oh, Sandra, who did this? Thieves cleared everything. Call police now." But Sandra didn't hear them. Not really. Her eyes were searching for one thing, and when she realized it was missing too, her knees nearly buckled. The mannequins were gone. For a moment, silence swallowed her ears. Then, unexpectedly, laughter rose from her chest. Soft at first, then louder. It burst out uncontrollably, rolling through the market lane. She laughed with tears streaming, laughed until her stomach hurt, laughed like someone who had lost her mind. The women around her exchanged worried looks. Some crossed themselves. Others shook their heads. But Sandra knew something they didn't. This wasn't madness. It was freedom. The mannequins had left her. The curse had moved. That evening, when she stumbled into her mother's arms, Mama Grace was frantic. "Sandra. They said robbers cleared your shop. All your sweat. What will you do now?" Sandra smiled through her tears. Her shoulders felt lighter than they had in months. "Mama, let them take it. I am free." Mama Grace didn't understand. But she saw the strange peace in her daughter's eyes. For the first time in months, Sandra slept deeply, without nightmares. Meanwhile, in another part of Lagos, BC stood proudly in her new shop. The shelves gleamed with wigs she had stolen, the fresh paint smelled of new beginnings, and a shiny glass door announced her presence to the street. But in the corner, watching silently, stood the mannequin. Its glossy eyes caught the fluorescent light. Its lips curved faintly into a smile. BC dusted its cheek with a cloth, adjusted the wig she had placed, and stepped back to admire her handiwork. "Perfect," she whispered. She thought she had stolen success. But what she had really carried into her new life was a curse that never dies, only changes hands. BC's shop opened with fire. From the very first week, customers poured in like water breaking through a dam. They came from Instagram, from word of mouth, from friends dragging friends. Everyone wanted her wigs. But it wasn't just the wigs, it was the mannequins. Displayed by the glass, their glossy faces gleamed, their heads tilted just so, their synthetic hair bouncing as if alive. Whenever BC dressed one, the wig sold that same day, sometimes within hours. The market women around whispered. "This girl, her luck stronger." Some muttered in envy. Others shook their heads in awe. BC basked in it. She bought herself a new iPhone, posted TikToks of her customers, and strutted online with captions like, "Grace works overtime for me." She didn't mention Sandra once. In her mouth, her success was all hustle, all God, all BC. Weeks passed. Her shelves emptied faster than she could stock them. She moved from selling cheap synthetic wigs to human hair imports. She hired 2 girls to help with packaging and delivery. And in the evenings, she would sit alone in the shop, looking at the mannequins. Sometimes she thought their eyes followed her. Sometimes she felt them whisper, though she could never hear the words clearly. But instead of fear, she felt pride. She believed they were blessing her. It started small. A few strands of hair on her pillow in the morning. BC frowned, brushed them aside, and told herself it was stress. Then came the fatigue. No matter how much she slept, her bones felt heavy, her body sluggish. No hustle, she told her assistants, laughing it off. When money day come, body go tire. But in the mirror, her reflection was changing. Her once smooth skin grew dry. Her eyes lost their shine. The glow she bragged about on Instagram dulled, replaced by shadows she tried to cover with makeup filters. At night, she began to dream. In one dream, the mannequins stood around her bed, their glossy eyes glowing faintly. One reached out, placed a cold hand on her scalp, and tugged. She woke up sweating, her scarf loose, fresh strands of hair littering the sheets. She laughed it off. Maybe I need relaxer. But deep inside, a slow dread was beginning to coil. One afternoon, scrolling through her old phone gallery, BC stumbled on pictures of Sandra, healthy, vibrant, glowing with the same light she herself once had. For a moment, guilt pinched her chest. But she shook it off quickly. Sandra was weak. She wasn't. Sandra couldn't handle success. She could. BC didn't know she was already repeating the same steps, walking the same curse path. And the mannequins, standing silent in her shop corner, only smiled. At first, BC thought she could hide it. A little concealer, a scarf tied tighter, a new filter on Instagram. Customers still rushed in, still swore her wigs were magic. Her assistants handled the work, leaving her to smile and pose for photos. But the mannequins knew. Every morning, more hair littered her pillow. Her scalp itched constantly, as if something crawled beneath it. By afternoon, her body dragged with exhaustion. By night, the dreams came. In those dreams, she stood in the shop at midnight. The mannequins surrounded her, their glossy eyes glowing faintly. They tilted their heads, watching. Then one stepped forward, placed icy hands on her face, and whispered in a voice like glass shattering. "Your turn." She always woke screaming. Her customers began to notice. "Madam, you dey alright? You don't slim oh. Why your face dey look pale?" BC laughed it off, snapping back with jokes. But the whisper spread. People wondered aloud if she had fallen sick. Some muttered darker things, juju, sacrifice, secrets. Her assistants whispered behind her back. They noticed her hands trembling when she held wigs. They saw her scratch at her scalp until blood dotted her fingernails. Sales slowed. Not because the wigs lost quality, but because BC herself looked like a walking warning. Who wanted to buy beauty from a woman who seemed to be losing hers? BC stopped going out. She cancelled hangouts, avoided family, ignored messages. The iPhone she once flaunted now sat silent, her Instagram page frozen. One evening, her closest friend barged into the shop and gasped. BC sat on the floor, a half-empty carton of wigs beside her. Her scarf had slipped. Bald patches gleamed under the harsh fluorescent light. Her eyes were ringed with purple shadows, her lips cracked. "Jesus Christ, BC, what happened to you?" BC smiled weakly, rocking back and forth. "Nothing. Business is good. The mannequins, they are helping me." Her friend backed away slowly, fear tightening her throat. She never returned. The curse quickened. Her skin turned grayish, stretched tight over her cheekbones. Her gums bled when she brushed. Her weight melted away until her assistants whispered that Madam looked like a walking skeleton. Customers avoided the shop entirely. Deliveries slowed, then stopped. Even her assistants began skipping work, leaving her alone with the mannequins. And that was when the voices grew louder. Not whispers anymore. Full sentences. Fix our wigs. Stand straighter. Look at us. Sometimes she obeyed, trembling, adjusting a mannequin's hair while tears streamed down her hollow cheeks. Other times she screamed at them, throwing wigs across the room, kicking their stands until her foot bruised. But when she looked back, they were always upright, untouched, their glossy eyes fixed on her. Watching. Smiling. By the time 2 months had passed, BC was unrecognizable. The girl who once strutted with stolen pride now shuffled in rags, her beauty devoured by the very mannequins she thought brought her glory. And outside her shop, the market women began whispering again. Have you seen her lately? Chai, this is how Sandra started. Maybe the mannequins are cursed. But no one dared say it too loudly. Because every time someone passed BC's glass window, the mannequins seemed to turn their glossy eyes outward, watching, waiting for who would be next. BC's shop no longer looked like a business. The shelves were bare, curtains scattered, wigs dumped carelessly on the floor. Dust gathered on the counter. A sour smell hung in the air, the smell of sweat, unwashed clothes, and fear. Only the mannequins stood unchanged. Glossy, perfect, untouched by decay. Their painted smiles gleamed in the dim light. BC, meanwhile, was a shadow of herself. Her once round cheeks were hollow, her lips cracked and darkened. Her head was a patchwork of baldness and brittle strands. Her clothes hung loose on her shrinking frame. Most days, she sat cross-legged on the floor, muttering to herself, answering the mannequins aloud. Yes, I'll fix it. Don't shout. Please, not tonight. One hot afternoon, a woman wandered in, unaware of the whispers that had spread. She wanted a wig for her daughter's wedding. Good afternoon, she said cheerfully, stepping inside. BC leapt up, eyes wild, grinning too wide. Welcome, my sister. You came. I have the best wigs. The mannequins, they'll show you. Yes, they'll show you. The woman froze. BC's scarf slipped, revealing her bare scalp. Her eyes darted nervously to the mannequins, whose glossy faces gleamed as if amused. Without a word, the woman turned and ran. She told everyone she met, don't enter that shop. Something lives there, not human. From that day, no customer dared step inside again. Night after night, BC remained with the mannequins. Sometimes she screamed at them, her voice hoarse. Other times, she begged, crawling on the floor, kissing their cold plastic feet. Please, please, just give me back my beauty. I'll serve you, I'll sell more wigs, just don't take everything. But the mannequins never answered in words. They only watched, their glossy eyes glinting, their smiles eternal. And in the silence, BC's body continued to waste away. One dawn, when the street sweepers passed the row of shops, they noticed BC's glass door wide open. Curious, one of them peeked inside. What she saw made her scream. BC's body lay crumpled on the floor, thin as sticks, her scarf fallen aside, her scalp completely bare. Her mouth was frozen in a half-smile, eerily like the mannequins she had served. And around her, the mannequins stood closer than before, arranged in a circle, their glossy eyes fixed downward, watching her as if admiring their work. Within days, word spread. The landlord locked the shop. Neighbors swore they heard strange noises at night, plastic feet shifting, faint whispers, the creak of stands moving when no one was inside. Some market women said the mannequins were waiting for their next owner. Meanwhile, across town, Sandra's life was quiet. She no longer owned a shop, no longer chased customers or hustled for likes online. Her hair never grew back fully, but she wrapped her head proudly and sold small things from home. She cooked with her mother, laughed softly at the compound children's games, and for the first time in years, slept peacefully. Whenever whispers of BC's fate reached her, Sandra only sighed and shook her head. She thought she stole from me, she told her mother one evening. But she only carried what was never hers to carry. Mama Grace crossed herself. My daughter, thank God you are free. Sandra smiled faintly. Until they find another. And in a locked, dusty shop downtown, the mannequins stood silent, their glossy faces glowing faintly in the shadows, their eternal smiles sharper than ever. Waiting. Months passed. BC's shop remained locked, dust gathering on its glass door. The landlord tried to rent it out, but every interested tenant turned away after peeking inside. Some swore they felt cold fingers brush their skin. Others claimed they heard whispers, though the shop was empty. The mannequins stood silently, untouched, waiting. One Saturday, a young woman named Kaamika strolled through the market. Freshly graduated, restless, she dreamed of starting her own hustle. She had tried catering, tailoring, even thrift clothes, but nothing stuck. That afternoon, she wandered past the abandoned shop. The dust on the glass made it hard to see inside, but something caught her eye. A mannequin. Its glossy face gleamed faintly through the grime, lips curved in that eternal half-smile. Kaamika paused. Something about it tugged at her. She pushed the door gently. To her surprise, it creaked open. The shop smelled stale, but she hardly noticed. She stepped closer, staring at the mannequins. Their wigs were gone, their dresses old, yet they still looked beautiful, almost alive. Her heart beat faster. If I had mannequins like this, she thought, my business would blow. Customers will rush me. Instagram will hear my name. A smile spread across her face. The mannequins, glossy eyes fixed on her, seemed to smile back. That evening, Kaamika told her cousin. I saw mannequins in an abandoned shop. I think the place is cheap. I want to take it. Her cousin frowned. That shop. The one where that girl died. I beg, leave it all. But Kaamika only laughed. People like to exaggerate. If she failed, that's her problem. Me, I'm different. You see. And in the locked shop, shadows lengthened as the mannequins stood waiting. They had found their next keeper. The end.